Thanks so much, JP. And thanks to all of you who are participating in this press call. We have come together, members of the House Democratic Delegation, not an all-inclusive group of us who are present on this press call today, but we have great members joining. We have Representative Lloyd Doggett, Representative Joaquin Castro, Representative Al Green, and we're hoping to be joined by Representative Sylvia Garcia. And we asked you all to join us because we are joining the voices of many alarmed Texans who want the Department of Justice to investigate the actions of Attorney General Ken Paxton. I want to first say we know very well that the Attorney General has used his office historically as a way of pursuing political efforts. From my perspective, he has a history of misusing his power, and we have seen it in a very alarming way as the Attorney General has targeted Latino advocates and activists, raiding homes, taking electronic equipment, taking even medication from Latino advocates and activists who have a long history of helping get out the vote in Texas. It should be very obvious to all of us that this targeting of the Latino community, and in one case, a highly contested district in the upcoming election, is part of his political maneuverings to suppress the vote in Texas. Unfortunately, our state has a long record and a dark history of trying to suppress voter turnout. And we think it's imperative that the Department of Justice investigate the Attorney General's actions. And we will be all joining a letter that will be delivered to the Department of Justice later this week that calls on them to do just that. I'd like to turn it over now to Representative Lloyd Doggett, who will also share his concerns with you.
Thanks so much for your leadership on demanding that the Department of Justice investigate this politically motivated attempt to intimidate Latino voters. They seem not content with the fact that we're already number one among the 50 states in difficulty and obstacles to voting. But this is a devious effort to make us even more solid as ground zero for voter suppression. It's like Donald Trump's big lie. They're moving now with the big search, and it's rooted in fear. Paxton's afraid that Texans will vote in unprecedented levels to reject Trump's racist, dark vision of America. By using taxpayer dollars to execute these outrageous search warrants against South Texas Latinos, Paxton appears inspired by Trump's dangerous rhetoric, like the kind he heard when he joined Trump on January the 6th in Washington. The Department of Justice must investigate this abuse of power to silence minority communities from voting freely and fairly. Their effort is directed particularly at community and volunteer groups that help get out the vote, and rightly so. You know, thanks to Republican gerrymandering, I've seen a lot of South Texas, just not all at the same time. And whether in Mission or Hidalgo that I've represented, or San Diego or San Antonio that I've represented, in these largely Latino communities, family is everything. There's lasting trauma when a grandmother's home is raided, a grandmother who perhaps has told her family of the many barriers she faced as Latinos were discriminated against in prior years in the state of Texas. And now Paxton's even suing the Bexar County and Harris County commissioners because they had the audacity to plan to send out voter registration materials to all their citizens of all ethnicities and races. It seems to me that we hear in Spanish and English, your vote is your voice, but the only voice that Ken Paxton wants to hear is one that agrees with him. And I would just close by adding that at the same time all of this is going on, even though voting by non-citizens is already illegal, Speaker Johnson and Chip Roy are threatening already to shut down our government this very month unless they can obtain a last-minute change in federal election laws for a new form of identification. It won't be enough to simply have the real ID that you use to get through the airport. No, they want a new document, perhaps a passport, to show where you were born. Such an abrupt change just here weeks before the election will create chaos for all Americans in the election process, but maybe that's what their objective is. So investigate Paxton, reject Republican extortion, encourage every Texan to vote, and in a new Congress, we're going to get about early next year enacting the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. We're going to hear next from Representative Joaquin Castro. He will be followed by Representative Sylvia Garcia, and Representative Al Green will close us out.
Thank you, Congresswoman Escobar, and thank you for convening us today to talk about these intimidation and voter suppression tactics by Ken Paxton and Republicans. Over the years, Texas Republicans have made it harder and harder for Texans to vote, even though it was never especially easy in Texas to vote. And they have used new laws, including voter ID, but also, for example, changing it so that if you want to register somebody to vote, you have to be deputized in every single county that you want to do that. So they've used laws, they've used executive actions. The latest one by Governor Abbott and his administration is dumping 1.1 million people from the rolls, the voter rolls, including hundreds of thousands whose registrations have been suspended. About 2 weeks ago now, I took my son, Ramon, to get a haircut not too far from where we live. And the barber was talking about how he had voted over the years pretty consistently, and he checked his voter registration and it had been suspended. And he asked how he could go about fixing that. And so they've used laws, executive action, and also legal threats. We saw in the last few days, as was mentioned, Ken Paxton threatened Bexar County, my hometown of San Antonio, and Harris County, two large urban majority minority counties, with threats of lawsuits, taking them to court for just sending out a form to help people register to vote, not to send in a mail ballot or to actually cast a vote, but just to register to vote. And that's because Texas has one of the lowest percentage of people who are registered to vote because the state makes it hard. And so this is an effort to help people to get registered to then participate in the process. All of these things are meant to keep new people from becoming voters in Texas. And you might ask, well, why would they want to do that, or why would they care about that? Because if you've been winning elections for 20 plus years statewide, then you don't want new people to vote. You want the same people to vote over and over and over. You want that voter profile in Texas to look exactly the same. And that's what they're trying to do, is to keep the status quo. So they're trying to scare new people off from voting. If somebody sees on the news, oh, well, somebody got prosecuted because they tried to help their neighbor, get a mail ballot delivered or put in the mail or something, then it's more likely that new people, or some new people at least, will get scared off and say, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to do something that's going to get me in trouble. And so I'm just not going to go vote. I don't want to hassle with something that might get me in legal trouble. So they're trying to win elections and hang on to power by scaring people, by intimidating them, and by doing everything they can to suppress the vote in Texas. And so I join my colleagues and LULAC in asking the Department of Justice to look at any civil rights violations, any voting rights violations that the state of Texas may be responsible for through these actions.
Thank you, Representative Castro. Representative Garcia.
Thank you, and hello to all my colleagues, and I'm happy to join you all here this afternoon to once again, and I say once again because this is a pattern of practice of this Attorney General, to circumvent and undermine the integrity of elections in this great state of Texas. This is part of the scheme of Texas MAGA Republicans to sow doubt about the integrity of our elections and promote Donald Trump's big lie, despite proof there is no widespread voter fraud in Texas or in this country. I'm deeply concerned that these raids are just another example of a long and disturbing history of civil and voting rights abuses here in Texas. Paxton is once again using his office to enact a personal political vendetta against Texas Democrats and Latino groups that he disagrees with. All he knows how to do is play cheap political games at the expense of Texas taxpayers. And we know he'll break the law or violate all codes of ethics for his own political gain because he's done it in the past and he will do it again. We know this because he's done it in time and time again. Here in Houston, he recently tried shutting down local immigrant rights group, FIEL, for allegedly violating rules governing the organization's nonprofit status. But of course, his first move, which was a TRO, was denied by a local judge. This is part due to the 2022 Texas Court of Appeals ruling that Paxton did not have the unilateral right to prosecute election cases, as local DAs are the ones that hold that authority. But in response, Paxton did everything he could to ensure that 3 members of the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals did not win their re-elections. He succeeded in his political revenge, and we should all be concerned. This is right out of a dictator's playbook, going after those with whom you disagree. They disagreed with him, he went after them, and now they've lost. Paxton's attempt to harass and intimidate groups like LULAC perpetuate a pattern and culture of violations against Latino voters. This conduct should not go unchecked, and the Department of Justice should conduct a swift and thorough investigation. In any of his attempts at sending intimidating, threatening letters to Harris County about things that they have always traditionally been able to do, not only under the letter of the law, but pursuant to law, should also not go unchecked. It is just outrageous that Ken Paxton continues to use his office for his own personal agenda and continues to sue the Biden administration in every way that he can. I believe the last time I looked it up, he has sued Biden over something at least 75 times. Think of the waste of taxpayer dollars. Think of what he should be filing and he's not filing to protect the rights of our children that are in protective custody, to protect the rights of women, to protect the rights of individuals who have disabilities, to protect the rights of so many Texans. Yet he chooses to do things at his whim and using our taxpayers' dollars as his personal kitty. So we must put a stop to this, and the only way we can do that is to ask the Attorney General for a full investigation to make sure that Paxton does not interfere with our election, because it is he who is interfering by suggesting others are interfering. So he is actually doing what he is seeking to stop others from doing it. We need to stop this. We need to stop it now. And we need to be extra careful and cautious about any of the oversight that has been announced that will be coming from the Secretary of State's office and his office and the governor's office, particularly with attention to Harris County, Bexar County, and a couple of the other large urban counties. I was a judge, once. I was still a lawyer, and I can tell you that this Attorney General has overstepped in so many ways that all we need is the Attorney General to come down and just take a little look, and we'll find that this Attorney General is doing things where he has no authority to do them. With that, I yield back.
Amen. Thank you so much. And to close us out, Representative Al Green.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. I greatly appreciate what you're doing in the name of justice. I'm deeply concerned, and I have to ask myself, what probable cause did the Attorney General have to, according to this news report that I have in my hand, to go to Ms. Linda Martinez, an 87-year-old retired educator, to go to her home, it says. She said she heard a knock on the door at 6 a.m. What was the probable cause to go to her home at 6 a.m.? And then she came to the door, and according to this news report, 9 officers, 7 of them men, some with guns in their holsters, then pushed open the door, marched past her living room. She said she got scared. I would be afraid. Early in the morning, disturbing the peace and quiet of my home, my castle. There has to be more explained to the public. There needs to be more transparency. They've not said enough to convince me that they had the probable cause to do what they did. And I will join the letter. I will join a protest movement. I will do whatever is necessary to protect an 87-year-old woman in her home, protect her from men coming in with guns. This is unconscionable. It is the epitome of what I call minority voter phobia. It is a fatuous means of taking things out of context and causing people to become frightened about a lawful process in the United States of America. I thank you again. I look forward to receiving your letter so that I may sign it.
Thank you so much, Al. So grateful to my colleagues for their firm support of voting rights and Texans and Latino communities. JP, I'll turn it over to you so you can call on reporters who might have questions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Congresswoman. If you all have a question, if you could drop your name and organization in the chat, and I will call on you to ask your question. We have Sanford from the San Antonio Current.
Hello.
Hi.
Reportedly, there has been a grand jury impaneled in San Antonio to look into allegations of abuse of office by Ken Paxton. This is, of course, something that's been going on for a while, independent of this, the raids he conducted and the suit he filed against Bexar County. But I'm wondering if anybody has heard any rumblings on when there might be some sort of movement forward on that particular case.
Yeah, I haven't. This is Joaquin, Sanford, and I haven't heard anything. I mean, I think that it's appropriate given Attorney General Paxton's conduct and how I think he's abused his office over the years.
I'm curious too if anyone cares to comment on the timing that we're seeing right now with this flurry of activity. The 2 investigations that he's announced in the lawsuits in Bexar County and Harris County.
I'll jump in again. Also, I think one thing that has escaped attention is that these were members of LULAC. I mean, this is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Latino civil rights organization in the country. And shortly before this, LULAC had endorsed Kamala Harris for president. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that Ken Paxton, who is very close to Donald Trump, who has used his office in every way he can to intimidate people, to suppress the vote, went after a group of LULACers in this way.
We just add to Joaquin's comment, Trump has already called for attorney generals and district attorneys around the country to prosecute his enemies, and has said that's what he's going to do when he gets in office. The timing here, as was pointed out, certainly with the LULAC endorsement of Vice President Harris, but it's at the very time LULAC and other community organizations are beginning to plan their fall voter registration drives. We're just a few weeks away from the voter registration deadline for registering new people, encouraging them to re-register in the precinct they live in if they have moved. And we're a very short period of time before the vote by mail ballots go out to so many seniors. These are times when LULAC and other community organizations are making that extra effort to get the vote out. And that's the very kind of thing, whether it's LULAC or the Bexar County and Harris County Commissioners Court, that Ken Paxton is determined to stifle.
I just want to add something real quickly too. I think if you look at all the things that my colleagues have already mentioned, LULAC historically has never endorsed, and they did. Then we come back from such huge momentum from Chicago, where immediately one of the polls here in Texas suggests that the surge in the numbers and the momentum for the vice president is so high that it's already sliced by one half the lead of a Republican the Republican lead in Texas. So they're running scared. They're running scared. They hear from their mega extremist, convicted felon nominee, let's go after him. And no one listens to him better than Ken Paxton. Remember, Ken Paxton was at the White House and was a speaker on the day of the insurrection. Ken Paxton filed one of those many lawsuits to try to make sure that some of the electoral votes didn't count. Ken Paxton has been in the run and in the chase for an appointment from the extreme Trump Republican group for a long time. So he's still currying favor with them. He's still auditioning for a position. And that's why he does the things he does, to curry favor with the man that used to be in the White House that he worshiped. So it's all about Project 2025. It's all about making sure that they start disrupting the elections early, and that they set the pattern and the predicate so that they can continue to do that. And they've never had to be scared in Texas before, but they are running scared in Texas. They just won't admit it.
If I may, I thank you again, Madam Chair Escobar, for pulling us together. This appears to me to be an attempt to indict LULAC in the court of public opinion, to give people reasons to think that somehow LULAC is a part of an organized effort to engage in fraudulent voter harvesting and to somehow skew an election. But LULAC is not going to be intimidated. I know the members of LULAC. They've been here for decades upon decades. They do this kind of voter assistance, and they do it lawfully. And they should not be indicted in the court of public opinion. And I really think that there's an attempt to intimidate LULAC and LULAC followers, but it won't work. LULAC is a strong organization with strong people who are going to do the right thing to help people get to the polls. I'm going to help people get to the polls as well.
Thank you. JP, who's next?
We have Michael from WOAI News Radio out of San Antonio. I think that'll be our last question, considering several members have outs in about 4 to 5 minutes.
Thank you all for doing this call. I appreciate it. In the filings that the AG, Mr. Paxton, has filed, he has continually referred to this press release that was put out by the governor's office talking about people removed from the voter rolls. I'm sure you've all seen this release from the governor where he talked about 6,500 potential non-citizens removed from voter rolls, approximately 1,900 have a voter history. And it sparked the question about whether non-citizens are being allowed to register and vote in elections in Texas. Do any of you have any confirmation or any information about non-citizens being allowed to vote in Texas?
I'll give a comment. This is a level of inanity that borders on insanity. It makes no sense to believe that people who are non-citizens are going to put themselves in harm's way. With all this being said about fraudulent elections and the way the former president has behaved, people are not going to put themselves in harm's way. They're not going to go into some public official's office or fill out some document. It makes no sense to think that they would. People who are living in the shadows of life don't want to attract attention. They are people who are trying to make a living. They're people who are trying as best as they can to stay out of harm's way. So this just makes no sense. It's the kind of thing that you wish people wouldn't publish if they had good sense.
I would
I
just
think
add
I'd like
that
to,
if they had one person out of that 6,500 that had voted illegally, and I'm sure they're combing through there trying to find even one, that person would be prosecuted. So the potential 6,500 may well be people that have since become citizens despite the discouragement of the Republicans. And this is all part of the same myth that Donald Trump promotes, that Democrats are out there urging people to come across our border in order to get registered to vote. That is illegal. It's been illegal for years. This is nothing but propaganda for extreme right-wing views to discourage at the same time legal voters from having their voice heard.
yep, agree completely with my colleagues. And I would just add, it really isn't on us to prove a negative. In other words, it's not on us to prove that that's not true. It really is on the governor and the attorney general to prove their accusation that undocumented people are voting in our elections. As Lloyd said, we would never, have never, will never encourage people to break the law, but that's not what this really is about. Lloyd mentioned at the top of our call what's happening in Congress. When we head back next week to Washington, D.C., the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is taking orders from the most extreme members of the Republican Party, which has become the MAGA party. They are demanding a vote on Chip Roy's SAVE Act. We all know that this is not about undocumented people voting in elections and making it illegal. That's already against the law. Tucked into that bill are more voter suppression practices and policies that they want implemented to prevent people from getting to the polls, to prevent people's voices from being heard, to prevent Texans and people across the country from having a voice in their future. It is absolutely transparent what they are doing. And frankly, many of their accusations about the undocumented who allegedly are voting, they do link with the Great Replacement Theory, which is a racist philosophy that they are no longer whispering in the hallways, but they're saying it out loud. It's alarming. The Great Replacement Theory has motivated horrible attacks against people, including in my own community of El Paso. So we are sounding the alarm on the Republican abuse of power, and specifically in this call, our AG, who has misused his authority over and over and over again. Colleagues, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what's been said, and I think it's really the crux of the whole thing here. It's they already make it so hard to register to vote. That really is hard to register to vote in Texas. Every year they add more and more penalties for people who don't turn in the paperwork, or if they're registered, voter registrars or not. I mean, it's so hard to vote. So you have that difficulty. Then, as my colleague and dear friend Al Green said, people are not going to do something when they know there's all these obstacles and this potential risks. Already with the public charge rule, we see that people don't apply for some things, even though they're eligible, because they're heard about something that may be wrong, and if you do or you don't, so they just stay away from it. It's had a chilling effect already throughout the years. So that's two factors. And then third, no one ever has any proof. And I'm asking the media to please help us hold these people accountable. When they say these things, ask them for the proof. Otherwise, why give their story so much credibility? If I were to go out there and say something that the Republican Party's doing, the first thing everybody says, well, really, where's the proof? She doesn't have proof. Well, they don't have proof of anything. It's all good Texas bullshit, but that's all that it is. And we need to make sure that moving forward that we let people know and call it what it is, that it's either lie, misleading, or just BS, because we're going to see a lot of it. The Labor Day kickoff signals the start of the campaigning. be a hard campaign, and we're going to have to expect a lot more of it. And we'll need the media's help in holding them accountable, especially when it comes to misleading the public and outright lying to the public about some things. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Sylvia. Any closing remarks? Okay, I want to thank my colleagues for joining on this call. We will share the letter with the media once we have all the signatures and once we've sent it to the Department of Justice. We appreciate all of you joining us today. Everyone, take care.